Hey everybody, welcome back to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host, Anne, Disembodied Haynes, Quindy, Disembodied Beard John, sometimes my errant puppy when she wants to make an appearance, and, everybody else. Hi guys. Wow, that's crazy wind in Scotland, Papa. Papa, did you see this? 107 miles per hour? That's crazy, Cornico. Insane, like Hurricane Scotland. Crazy talk. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Yeah, crazy weather. Well, we're glad you're here, Cornico, and that you didn't lose internet. Or if you did lose internet, they restored it. Super. We're gonna green work today, guys. We're gonna green work. I have fresh new green stuff. So we're gonna green work. Thanks, Fine Line. Yeah. It's signed. It's autographed to me from Larry. I painted his, when he first started doing the Masterworks set for Dark Sword Miniatures, I painted a box of those. And he liked my paint jobs. So, since I'm a total Elmore fangirl, that was pretty much made my whole career. I'm just like, all right, can't possibly exceed this at this point. But yeah, so... One of my proudest acquisitions. So figured it was. I got sick of my mess being visible on camera, so I'm like, I'll just put Larry there. Larry's stuff is like far better than my mess. Yeah, I own very few of the prints, but sadly I lost the other autographed one. It was damaged in my move, one of my moves, but I don't have a lot of wall space. My husband and I have wall space that's already taken up in the other room. So I have a little bit of wall space here. And this one was meant to be hanging on the wall. But then I was like, well, but I kind of need something here. So there we go. It is one of my favorite, I'd say one of my all-time favorite Elmores. The companion box set. I used to just stare at that artwork and try to draw like that so much when I was a kid. Yeah, we've had a lot of rain in successive days, too, here, Cornico. Not the wind that you got, thank God. So we've got our green stuff. I put it in the freezer immediately upon it arriving, so now we have it out here. I'm probably going to trim, since we have two sections. I'm going to get out my scissors and just trim this down the middle and put the other back in the freezer. Freezer just helps to preserve it, keep it from bonding to itself. Keeps it fresh for longer, just like other stuff. So I'm going to cut that down the middle and we'll put this part back in the packaging. But yeah, these days I'm less about acquiring stuff and more about executing on what I've got, just because it helps me stay sane. Made some progress on Kiki's blanket over the weekend. It's going to be a long time, obviously a long time project, but actually, because the yarn is bulkier, it's going a little faster than I thought it would, which is great. It'll keep me encouraged to be able to knit up the panels and then put them together into a dog blanket. So let us see. So the reason I decided to go with green stuff on this from here on out is because it's just getting too fine. Like, I could try to find little grit. I used to have really fine sand, but I'm not sure where it's gone to in all of the moves and all the stuff. So essentially here, I want to blend some of this stuff into Ed's base. If I can blend it in with just some textured green stuff, then I can keep these little hands here, and maybe just kind of fade it into some stone back here. I'm not sure what I want to do. But I feel like I want to go now to green stuff texture. I want to, I do need to put some gravel down here to blend this in, so we'll do that probably first. I did not find my kitty cats, and I just decided I didn't have quite enough room, so I'm just going to go with what I've got here for Ed, and probably just do some vegetation, maybe another skull down here, because I have skulls. So doing another skull down here on the bottom would be good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to draw dragon. I wanted to draw dragons just like Larry. He was my favorite dragon artist for sure. So But yeah, so we're gonna just put a little bit more of undeady stuff down here. I don't think the kitty would fit anyway. It has a pretty wide base, so it would kind of not work. I was thinking about it a lot. So we'll put some gravel, some normal standard gravel mix. No, I don't think it'll fit, and I don't have it. So it's just not going to work, Joe. Sometimes even though you want a concept, even though you've got a concept in your head, if you realize it's not going to work, there's no point in ripping apart what you've already done to do it. If you really wanted it that much, you should have planned it from the beginning. Like, I should have dug those models out months ago and had it ready. But I didn't, and so now I'm like looking at it, and I just don't think it's going to work. So you should never cling to an idea just because like you had an idea. Like if you don't think it's going to work for the piece, or it's going to make a lot of extra work, or you're going to have to rip apart stuff you've already done, let it go. I try never to like fall into that sunk cost fallacy where it's like, I spent a lot of work on this, or I spent a lot of time thinking about this idea. I can drop that idea. It doesn't matter. The energy's already spent. Oh yeah, for sure, the cats, yep. Alright, so I am going to grab my gravel stuff. Gravel stuff. Is it down here? Or is it up here? Gravel stuff? Gravel stuff is up here. I still need to clean up this area. I have stuff back here. Larry's become my hidey hole door. Yeah, good. So I've just got a sand and gravel mixture here. It originally was Games Workshop. I like it because it's a nice organic mix of smaller sand particles and like bigger rocks, and you can really kind of tilt it and use parts of it that you need depending on what you need. You can also build your own with Woodland Scenic stuff and other gravels. I have my little scoop that I made out of just Bristol cardstock. This is just so I can target various areas more finely when I'm pouring the stuff. It's also so I can grab specific, like if I just want sand, I can use this to just grab sand and ignore all these bigger rocks. Morning, Dappidware. Norman. Morning. Yeah, mostly at this point. The other reason when I thought about it, I know this is a Dark Sword piece, but I was like, I kind of want to keep it Reaper because Ed. So that's the other reason to not go and spend a lot of extra time looking for my undead cats. Alrighty, and glue. So we'll do the gravel first. I had to grab, where are my skulls? Skulls. I have skulls over here somewhere. Aha. Skulls. Oh yeah, Woodland Scenics over here is like kind of the equivalent. They stock a lot of stuff and are good value for basing, but Woodland Scenics tends to only sell in larger quantities. I always tell people to just buy a big thing and go in on it with painter friends. That way everybody gets enough basing materials to last them for the rest of their lives, and you just like buy it once. So I'm going to look at my little skulls in here. A lot of them are kind of flat. I want to make sure I get a good skull, so this is what Reaper used to do. I don't know if they still put out Skull Pack, but I don't think they do the huge things of them anymore. This skull's nice. Yeah, I've got a really nice little skull here. It was really symmetrical, so we use him. He also doesn't have much of a mold line. So we'll put him down there in the front. These are the skulls they used to do for, I've never heard of that company though, Kuro. But that's nothing new. I sometimes just don't hear about stuff unless one of my friends is using it. Stay. All right. Great. Right. They're cheap over here. Yeah. It's just the importing, I'm sure. So I'm going to grab a knife and just take the obvious mold line off of Mr. Skull here. And then we'll set him up, and then we'll do the gravel so that he can be partially buried in the gravel. Might need to use files for this one. He's so tiny. He's so tiny. I don't think I can get leverage on him with the knife, so diamond files it is. Hi, xylophone. 52 months. Just add water. It depends. Okay, so I'm going to do a YouTube video on this. It's going to be after the frozen paint one. If you have paints that are really thick, and you're going to have to open them up, xylophone. So obviously with a paint pot, you just open the top, but with a Reaper bottle, you'll have to pop the cap and the nipple off. Stick the butt end of an old paintbrush in there, poke around. If it's still goopy, like if it's just a paste, you absolutely can resuscitate it. Add just a bit of water and stir it around with that paintbrush until it starts to come together. Then add more water, essentially just bring it back that way. I usually use warm water or a hot water because it'll just help it mix a little bit more faster, but you can use whatever. And as long as it's like got some goopiness to it still, you can bring it back. However, if it is hard, if it's rubbery, you're done. You gotta buy a new one. Yeah, any water, doesn't matter. If you go to my YouTube, wait a minute, maybe this one is Patreon. I just did a new video called Do You Need Special Water for Miniatures Paints? But essentially the summary is that as long as you don't live in an area with a lot of old metal pipes, you can get away with just tap water. Most areas of the country are going to be that. They're going to be just fine for tap water. But places with really old pipes, like some areas of Manhattan, some areas of like the Midwest, big cities, can have old buildings that haven't been updated. But yeah, it'll take time to bring them back. This is why we always say, like, every couple of years, get your paints out, add water to them, and shake them. At least the colors that you care about. Because otherwise, all paint will slowly settle out and evaporate over time. Because plastic is porous. It may not be porous to like our senses, but over time, it is absolutely porous to air. So air will get in, water will evaporate, and the paint will become thicker. Over time, the resins will also settle out, and that's what makes the plug action. Yes, it's very hard to keep your hands on a skull. Most paints should have a fair tolerance. If you are already using tap water for mixing your paint, for like thinning your paint, Korniko, then you're fine. These days, paints have a better tolerance for a range of pHs than they used to. But if you're able to use it with your paint without separation or other issues, the answer is you're fine. If you at all have doubt, then just use, like, you don't even need to use like distilled water. You could just use spring water or filtered drinking water or whatever. Usually it's pH adjusted, but if you're really paranoid about it and you're not sure, then by all means use something else. But it's not necessary to use like distilled water like people say in most areas. Maybe some areas, if you're in like countries that are maybe have some of those like old pipes or just don't have a great quality of water, like then you might need to watch it. But I think most people overthink this because in this day and age, modern paint is made to use with a whole bunch of, like, it has a high tolerance. It takes a pretty wonky pH to throw things out of whack. And usually if you do have that wonky pH, it's because of those metal pipes. But again, it varies obviously by the country. Use your best judgment. And we've got that mold line pretty taken care of now off of this little skull. Yeah. Well, and my parents, like, I've painted at their house. They've got a water softener. A lot of places in Wisconsin and the Midwest do, um, because there's a lot of hard water up there. But I've never really had a problem with that. Is that the only person I knew who really had a problem with this kind of thing had like old metal pipes, that were just like his paint really hated them. So he was in a part of Manhattan, old part of Manhattan, old building. But I haven't had anybody otherwise report, just even with a wider pH, anybody else report problems with that. pH is important to paint, but these days modern paints are built with a tolerance, and that's why paints of different lines work together okay. It doesn't matter what pH the surfactants are built for. They're at this point they work with a range. They're not as dialed in. Very tolerant. Yeah, there will be a point at which the paint breaks, but as far as pH goes, but it's probably not within normal parameters. Alrighty, let's get this little Ed skull. I'll just prime it with brush on primer. Get our little Ed skull going on here. Yeah, I think a lot of people overthink this stuff. This is one of those popular overthinking things. I mean, it always comes down to, if you're worried, then, make some alterations. If you're, but you probably don't need to be worried. I had to punch out the top of my snozzle because it had glue in it. So I use my long attachment nozzle for the Zap-A-Gap when I'm doing this stuff. I think I'll put the skull way back here in this nook. Yeah, there we go. You can see that. I'm going to grab my... Boop. I never managed to leave my tweezers where I need them. There. So just set that on. Yeah, fish are far more sensitive to pH than paint is these days. But let's face it, paint manufacturers don't want you to have to like change up your water source when you're working with their paint. So it was, the industry had a vested interest in making things work. Okay, I squeezed out quite a bit of glue here, and that means it's going to creep up the sides, but that's kind of what I want. I'm going to take my pokey tool and draw it over here so I can get some of it integrated with the stuff over there. I've got it around Mr. Skull here. I don't want to really bury Mr. Skull. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to try to tilt it so that most of the glue runs more over here. And I'm going to be careful when I start. I'm going to put my little lid over the top here. I'm going to grab my little scoop. I can grab a couple of bigger stones. And pop them on there. So put the real rocks with the fake rocks. A lot of the cork is absorbing this now, so now I've got less of a puddle, and that's good. So I just kind of sprinkle that in. And I'll let it sit. Boop. So I had my writing coaching last night, and I definitely got my money's worth out of it. I learned something about how my brain works that has been not working to my advantage because I didn't know how my brain worked. And it turns out that, and this may or may not apply to you, it depends on your particular set of, personality traits and strengths, but I'm very much a thinker. I think a lot. I love to think. I spend a lot of my time thinking. And when I'm doing the book, I also spend a lot of my time thinking about the book. It's part of my process. It turns out that if you're very strong in that certain thinking strengths like I am, that whole takes a while to warm up thing doesn't just apply to sessions, which is what I had the feeling of, right? It applied to like a writing session. It would take me a while to warm up and really get to going, right? But it also applies to day. So if you are a thinker and you like to think about your miniatures and you like to plan things and kind of play around with ideas and stuff like that, and you find that you have a hard time sitting down and getting going on a project, be warned. I pretty much learned I've been doing it wrong. The answer is not to think, oh, I'm not really into it today, I'll come back tomorrow, if you have this particular set of strengths. Because if you do that, you're essentially resetting it, because it's not just a slow starter on the day, it's a slow starter over the course of successive days. So if you get like, oh, I'm not feeling it today, you put down your stuff, you go away for a day, you've essentially reset yourself to zero if you have this kind of thinking trait. So what you should do instead is maybe, try to paint a little more, and then the next day come back to it. Don't skip a day. And then don't skip the next day, don't skip the next day. Essentially, this depends on momentum. Momentum is huge if you have this kind of brain. So I've been doing it wrong because I've been constantly resetting. If you reset constantly at zero because you skip a day because you're dissatisfied or you think you have to think more or blah, 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 you actually handicap yourself. So I learned that. And it's not true for everybody. It's this particular strength trait that does this. But the coach yesterday, has this trait as well as me. And so he's like, well, this is what I learned. And I realized that it rang true because when I have been doing nano and making myself write every day, even if it's only a few words, I would always gain momentum as I went. Whereas lately I've been struggling because I've been, missing a day here, missing a day there, Sure, I had excuses, colonoscopy, crap like that. Right, okay. But I should have sat down and at least done 50 words, right? And I also found out that for me, maybe putting a word count target actually isn't the best thing to do because it adds a lot of pressure. And another trait of that particular type of brain is that it really hates pressure. It doesn't respond well to it. And a lot of us, I think, are like that, right? Pressure just makes us not like what we're doing. So the thing to do then is not to give yourself a word count or I'm going to finish the hair today. The thing to do then is to say, I'm going to sit down and paint for half an hour. I'm going to sit down and write for half an hour. Give yourself a time constraint and don't yell at yourself if you don't get a lot done. If you sat down for half an hour and all you did was base coat the hair, guess what? You're still one step further along. And you still interfaced with your model, which was the important part, right? You sat down, you engaged with your hobby, you relaxed, things like that, right? So do a time constraint, not a productivity constraint on yourself. Because if your goal is just to sit down and enjoy your hobby for 30 minutes and do whatever you feel like, that takes the pressure off. And taking the pressure off means that you're more likely to get more done, right? Because you're not under pressure. You can play around and do whatever you want. Just as long as you put some paint on the model over half an hour, it doesn't matter how little it is, it still counts, right? It's similar to what in writing we call the no 0 days thing, where you make sure that you at least check in on your manuscript. And I learned this actually the first time I heard about this was from Naomi Novik. I think an interview from her where she's like, I try to get in and write at least just a sentence. She's like, if I can get in there and write at least a sentence every day, I won't lose momentum. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to sit down for 15 minutes and just paint. Just play around. Maybe base coat a face. Maybe I'll try a new color on this loincloth. Whatever. Don't hold yourself. This is your hobby. You're supposed to enjoy it. It's my business too, but it's still my hobby and I like to enjoy it, right? So it also has a lot to do with enjoyment. If you're enjoying yourself, your creativity is going to flow a lot easier, right? And you're not going to yell at yourself. You're not going to beat yourself up like we tend to do. Yeah, and that's the big downside. You can't think of it as a failure. Did you sit down? Did you paint? Guess what? Win. Give yourself a gold star. You sat down. You painted. You engaged with your hobby in a pleasant manner. And that's the thing. And it can be hard, especially like there are some types of brains. Mine is also one of them because another one of my strengths is called learner. If you have a learner brain, if you really enjoy learning, try to flip that failure thought on its head. You will find it a little easier to flip that failure thought into a I learned something thought, right? Because if you really love to learn, then every so-called fail is just a learning opportunity. So if you otherwise really like to learn new things, try to, when you catch yourself beating yourself up on that or obsessing about failure, remind yourself that you just learned something that didn't work. Like, I've gotten to the point now where I'm pretty automatic about that. Like, I'll be disappointed for a second and then I'll be like, oh, but now I know not to do this again. Or now I know if I do this again, I have to do X or Y, right? So as you can tell, I learned a lot from a 15-minute coaching yesterday. So I think it's worth the money to stay at this level on the Patreon. Because we only touched on one strength of mine. Like, we didn't even touch on the other, 9 top 10 strengths that could be tripping me up. But I already have, ideas and action ideas, right? So I'm sharing with you guys what I learned. But yeah, so I learned those things, time constraint, not productivity constraint, take the pressure off yourself, just engage with the hobby, and try to do it every day. If you have that kind of thinky brain, because the problem with thinky brain is thinky brain will go off and daydream about projects and not do anything, right? That's the downside of thinky brain. They call it a basement. When thinky brain is in the basement, thinky brain goes down into the basement just to think about whatever, because it just loves to think. But then you don't actually do anything to make yourself happy. So you have to pat thinky brain on the head and say, okay, thinky brain, that's fine, but let's come up here and actually think about things while we do things. The other thing he pointed out that thinky brain people do, I'm just going to call it thinky brain now. I'm going to share that with Becca on her blog. Intellection is no longer intellection, is now thinky brain. Thinky brain also works better if you can pair it with something else. So and I think I've talked about this. This is also a habit thing, where if you let yourself listen to music that you really like while you paint, it'll help you consistently paint because you'll look forward to it. In my case, it's I'll listen to an audiobook that I really like while I paint. I've been looking forward to this. I get to sit down and paint, and I'm going to listen to my audiobook while I paint. And that makes the time fly by, right? Because you're not it makes you less likely to obsess because you've got something else that's just kind of occupying you, especially if you're somebody who needs background music or needs the TV on in the background, stuff like that. Doing that, letting yourself have the thing you like while you're painting, means that you're going to look forward to painting. Your brain is going to look forward to painting. You're not going to be as caught up with stress or anticipation or fear or things like that. The pressure is going to be off because you're just listening to tunes and painting, and it's fun, right? There's no pressure. So it's another tactic that you can use to pair, to stack your habits, essentially. Habit stacking can be also going off of another habit. So let's say that the thing you do every night after dinner is you wash the dishes, and then maybe you sit down to watch the television, right? Or watch Netflix or whatever these days. So now you're going to stack that habit. So, because the minute you finish the dishes, you're looking forward to watching TV or whatever. So when you sit down to watch TV, sit down with your paint stuff and work on some painting while you watch that show. there's bound to be times in that show where you can put a few licks of paint on the model, where the action isn't happening. So, while there's just dialogue, there's just exposition. Or watch a favorite movie that you've seen before. Like, for me, it was always either Tomb Raider or Fellowship of the Ring, one of the Lord of the Rings movies. I've seen them enough times. I still really love watching them because I just love watching them. But, and the soundtracks are great. But, at the same time, I can paint a lot while I watch them. Makes the time fly by. And it was a reward, right? It was a reward, and it tied in with my painting. So then it got to the point where if I put on even the soundtrack for Tomb Raider, I would feel like painting. And this is how your brain like associates stuff. It's fun. There's also a thing, and you need to think about. I learned another thing. So here. Oh, yeah. It's called Clifton Strengths, seriously. It's also called Strengths Finder. It's a system that's been around for like 40 years. The research on it is insane. And it's changed it's changed my total creative process to learn about myself. It's getting all 32 strengths, 34 strengths. Getting all 34 strengths done is more expensive, but you can buy hold on, I'm going to go over here and get my little book. 1 second. So, let's talk about the book. So, if you get the Strengths Finder book from Gallup, who does this, you get a code in the back to take the test and get the first 5 strengths free. So if you buy the book, you get the first 5 strengths, which honestly, your top 5 are kind of your superpowers. Thinky Brain is in my top 5. I'm going to totally name all of them now, but Thinky Brain is my favorite. So yeah, Strengths Finder. You can get that book off of Amazon. Use the code on their site. Take the test, and it will pinpoint it's the set of research is based on the idea that humans get more out of developing their strengths than they do shoring up their weaknesses. That's not to say that you shouldn't shore up a weakness if it's a really sore point with you, like if it's really hindering you, like if you have a weak point, you really want to work on it, do it. But you can get so much more out of developing the things you're already good at than you can out of trying to shore up all your weaknesses. Intellection, Kodiak. Although he had a lot to say about empathy, and it was so interesting because he's empathy 9 or empathy 10. He's empathy is not as common, but he mentioned how important it was to find an outlet for your emotions in order to be to be free, kind of emotionally free, because if you're high empathy, you can be afraid of being hurt a lot, like you're looking for a safe place. And that's why a lot of empathy people like to read books, because it's kind of a safe place, right? It's interesting. It's really interesting. But yeah, so Koro, I want to share with you something else he shared with me, which was actually totally what happens. So okay, here's me, and let's see if this sounds familiar. I don't know if you have Thinky Brain as your top strengths, but I will not have written, or I'll have written just a little bit. Then I'll go to Write Club. At Write Club, in an hour and a half, I can regularly pump out 2,000 words. Oh my God, super productive. And then I write nothing for 3 days. This is a thing. This is an actual thing with Thinky Brain. Thinky Brains, are much better doing small to moderate chunks over time, because that gives them time to think, right? To process and to think about what they're doing. And Thinky Brain can perform in a big chunk, can overcommit, but then afterward, Thinky Brain is burned out for days. And this is not the only strength that functions this way. So whatever you've got, we don't know, right, since you haven't taken the test. But keep in mind that with some people, this is a thing. If you push yourself a lot, as I know you do, you can also burn out your creativity and miss a day. Just because you're just tired. Your creativity is just tired. So if we overdo it, and sometimes it's I'm creative today, yay, I'm just going to push it. Be aware that you could essentially have 2 or 3 days of nothing, and guess what? That's not a problem. That's how your brain works. And this is for all of you mini painters out there, all of you who binge and then like there's nothing. This is a real thing, and it's a mechanical thing about the way certain brains work. So it's not a problem. It's a feature for you to be aware of. Essentially, instead of spreading your productivity over a little bit every day, you have binged, and now you are in the desert, and it'll come back. But again, with Thinky Brain now, you've handicapped yourself, right? Because now you've got to skip 3 days, and now you have to work to get back into the saddle properly. Yeah. So essentially, like, beware of that, because it can get into a wicked cycle if you've got a strength that acts like Thinky Brain does. Because, yeah, okay, I just totally binged at Paint Club. And usually, before Write Club, I've been working up to it, right? I've been thinking about the book, I've been working on the book, and then I do that 2,000 words, and then and then I have to fight on Wednesday or Thursday, because I start beating myself up about the fact that I haven't written for 3 days. Sound familiar? So, yeah. Yeah, empathy as one. Yeah, he had a lot of interesting things to say about empathy. Empathy is like 32 for me. Oh, man. Feelings? What are those? But Thinky Brain. If you need a Thinky Brain, I'm your Thinky Brain. All right, so yeah, so that's fun stuff about productivity and like how you can sabotage yourself and how your brain might be working, like how you may not be working like hand in hand with your brain, right? And that's why, for me, that's why I'm even interested in personality tests and stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out how I think so that I can do all the things I want to do in my life, right? And the more I learn about how I think, the more I'm able to hack my systems and essentially work better, right? Be more creative more often, do that kind of thing. It just makes a lot of sense. I see it in both my painting and my writing. Yeah, and it could be, Kuro, you could also be, there are certain people, achievers, the achiever strength, means that you can work nonstop. Like, you love to work. You get energy from getting things done and working. So if you have that kind of thing, it could be that those long paint days are great for you, but yeah, maybe you need to break it up. I don't know. Whatever you need to do. And this is something that Becca always says, but that, I find it so hard to do in the moment. What has worked for you in the past? During your most productive times, during the times when you have painted the most and felt the best about it and missed the least days or whatever your goal is. During those times, what did you do? What was life like, right? What was your routine like? Was there anything going on that was distracting, or were you pretty copacetic? Analyzing this stuff and figuring out, well, what did my best week, my best few days, what did that look like? And how is now different, right? Because it's not just our brains, much as we would love it if we could just fix our brains, but it's also our environment, right? So that matters a lot. So I'm going to use the sand to blend in that chunky earth, blend it back into the rock here. And then we're going to use green stuff to blend that. Hey there, Reaper Miniatures. Yeah, we're talking about brains now. Brains. Yeah? Yeah, and that's the getting started thing, right, Shadow Spawn? That's like, I get that about, like, exercise, where I'll be like, oh, I don't want to walk today. And I'll be like, well, I'll just go out and do 15 minutes. And I end up doing the full, half hour, 40 minutes. So sometimes it's just like getting yourself into it, right? Getting over that first bump. Yeah, that's a good analogy, the airplane analogy for that too. Yep. And again, not all brains are like this. This may not be your brain. Oh, I forgot to put my little catcher underneath, and now I've got gravel on my paper. I'll have to sweep that up. Anyway, get that going. Since I have my gravel in a jar, I like to just keep the jar lid underneath, and that way it can catch everything. So that's a finer sand, so that's going to help. Yes, if we're talking about brains today. Brains. Because I learned so much about mine over the weekend, or over last night. But yeah, and not everybody cycles like that. Some people are able to just like take off from a standing start, right? And some people, like, it just depends on how your brain works. Some people have a lot of fallow time and then they do a month where they just blow everything out. And that's how their brain works, right? That's why I like to learn more about how mine works, because especially with trying to get this new book done, get 2 books done this year, like I did last year, I feel like anything I can learn about how my creative process works. Well, that, and I'm not happy with how much I've been painting lately either, right? So I can take this and I can apply it now that I know that my creative brain works this way. It's going to apply to painting as much as it does to writing. So that means I really, if I want to be productive in my painting, it means I need to sit down every night for, 15 or 20 minutes, which will probably turn into half an hour to 45 minutes because that's my usual block. But if I want to feel like painting every night, if I want to get in the groove, then I got to get in the groove, right? And that is how my brain works. So, and that can be like, he talked about that last night too. What did we talk about on that? I'm trying to think about the partially finished projects. There are lots of strengths. I think we were talking about like strengths like learner, but there are lots of strengths that love to start new shiny things. They will always want to go for the new shiny thing. But if you never finish anything, you miss that great sensation of, finishing the project and executing on your idea, right? So again, this can be a trap, the whole like to start everything. And I think what he was talking, I'm trying to remember. I think pretty much he's like, what you've got to do is you've got to look at the parts of your brain that are going new shiny. And you've got to say, it's okay, brain, we'll go get to that new shiny, but we're going to work on this other piece tonight, right? So essentially make sure that you pick one piece and you set, essentially this is about, I remember now, it's clear goal setting. So if you just let yourself meander around in your hobby, which is fine, by the way, if you never finish a model and you don't care, rock on. But if you're like feeling frustrated that you don't finish things, that's different. That's probably your brain just needs to be reined in a little bit. So what he said is that no matter what strengths you have, if you give your strengths a clear goal that you really want to achieve, your strengths will work with that. They will work toward that. So if you always start things and you never finish them, chances are you don't have a clear goal. Whereas if you made a clear goal, not something that's pressureful either, unless you react well to pressure, but like for me, I'm like, I made a promo date for East of the Sun that's in the early April. So I have now assigned myself that early April is the latest possible that I can have Rite of Winter ready to go. And that gives me plenty of time to work on it, right? So that's, set yourself a goal, a clear goal, on one project that you really want to see finished. And then remind your brain, put a little sticky note up, do whatever you need to keep your brain, remind your brain, this is the goal. Because just because you feel like starting something new doesn't mean you have to. If you're obsessively painting, ask yourself whether you are doing it because you honestly enjoy it. And the question is, Caspar, are you getting energy from it? Or is it making you exhausted? Is it burning you out? Right? If it's burning you out, then you're probably doing it out of fear, and you need to figure out what you're afraid of. Like, am I afraid I won't be able to pay my bills? I need this extra money from painting. If you're in it for, for money, if you're trying to do it for part of a living like I do. Thinking about models all the time when you really enjoy painting is not a problem, really. Unless it's getting in the way of other stuff. Then I would ask if you're using your hobby to flee something else in your world. Like if your regular life is not going very well at all, and you dive into painting to like soothe yourself, that can be a productive way to do it, but at the same time, it's not helping you work through whatever it is that's affecting you. So you really, in that question, you got to ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? How does it make me feel to do this? That kind of thing. headspace for other things. Yeah, so you get really, really focused in on the one thing, huh? Usually if I'm really, really focused in, I need to actually take a physical break, Castfire. I guess cast fireball, but that's too long. Cast. We'll call you cast. So one thing that I find useful to reset my brain, because I also have super powered focus and a thinky brain, is that I will go out and take a walk. If I want to shift my brain away from anything that I've been like really, really on, I'll go out and actually take a walk. Yeah, so you need to put a break in there. Because some brains don't shift easily. Especially if you've got super powered focus and maybe you get a lot of energy from it, then your brain's going to want to keep doing it. So you got to give your brain the break that shows it, no, okay, time to stop. Let's go out, let's take a quick walk. If you got a dog, it's a great opportunity to just take your dog for a walk. Maybe if you don't go out, if you don't like to take a walk or whatever, then the answer is maybe get some weights or something, like a little dumbbells, whatever. Go and do something physical. Something physical specifically because it snaps you out of here. Got to do something, do some yoga. Put on a yoga YouTube video. Whatever appeals to you, whatever like that appeals to you. Maybe even something like chopping some vegetables for dinner. Like that prep work for supper can sometimes be a nice way for me to segue out of creative. Yeah, I mean, sometimes things cost willpower. It's just the way it is. But if you can hook that up to a habit, Castfire, this is the cue. Like maybe you set your timer in the afternoon because all right, I need to stop and prep for D&D at 4. So set your timer, give it a special ringtone, and when that ringtone goes off, wrap it up. Like that's where you put your willpower. You wrap it up, you go, you stand up. If your brain is freaking out too much, say, oh no, we can go back and paint later, it's fine. Sometimes you have to talk to your brain. It works. It does work. And then make yourself get up and do the physical thing, right? But that ringtone then becomes like your habit cue, right? And when you hear that ringtone, if you do that enough time for long enough, when that ringtone goes off, boom, that's when your brain will shift gear. It will want to shift gears then because it's used to it. So whatever you can do. Right, exactly. Or put on a different music or a movie that's specifically for D&D prep. Yeah, seriously, it has a great one. Yeah, if you find it really hard to break habits, probably your brain is one of those brains that loves to focus and think. And I've got a brain like that too. I also find it hard. What I have to do is actually remove things from my immediate environment in order to really break habits. Yeah. But if you can put like whether you like music or whether it's something you watch or something, I like to physically do, because painting doesn't get us to do a lot. Maybe it's just something as simple as standing up to stretch. Stand up, learn a few stretches to, like, we all have tight shoulders, learn a few shoulder stretches that really help you. Stand up and engage with your body, not your brain. Even just standing up, stretching, and taking like 10 deep breaths, that can be your cue. And if after that you go to do something else, even if it's just go get the D&D book out, and sometimes you have to make it baby steps too, Cast. This is another thing. Take it a baby step. Okay, first time, we stand up, we stretch, we take 3 deep breaths, and we go and we get our D&D book out, or our folder, or whatever our DM stuff is, right? We just get it out, that's all. Okay, now we can go back and paint if we want to, but you know what? If getting out the books has made us want to work on it, then work on your game. If it doesn't, if you still want to paint, okay, go back to painting. Next time, stop, get out your books, sit down, open them up, read the last note you took on the game. Okay, great. Do I feel like working on the game now? Awesome, then do it, right? Sometimes you have to ease into it. It's not an all or nothing, right? You got to figure out what's gonna help your brain do this. But again, using music or a show or something that you do specifically when you are working on your game, I can't downplay this enough, but your brain will get used to that, and when that situation is given to it, it will automatically feel like working on your game, because the brain wants to shortcut for us. It wants to make elegant shortcuts so that we don't have to think too much. So that we just do things. It's very lazy. So yeah, hopefully that stuff works. Today's topic is all the stuff I learned from my coaching last night, Richard, which is a lot of stuff on how to be more productive as a creative. Mindset. We're talking mindset today. It's been a while. Let's talk about brains. I love this stuff, Castfire, so no problem. Give it a try. Keep in mind, your brain is different from a lot of other people's, so, try different things, right? Try different things, see if it works for you. Yeah. But yeah, there are times when I get obsessive about stuff, and I need to break out of it, and I try to essentially set up. I'm going to leave that stone, but I think I'm going to green stuff around there. Okay, I think I've got all the gravel I want, and now I want to do some green work. All right, so we'll do some green work. Let's put our glue away here so that it doesn't dry out faster. Everybody's brains are different. But a lot of us, when we're creative, a lot of us will share certain strengths too. And there are definitely strengths that are more common in the population than others, and others that are rarer. I don't remember what Becca said, if Becca said that woo was the rarest strength. The woo stands for winning others over. It's a strength that essentially exactly does what you have a knack for that. And it's I believe, a pretty rare strength. At least among writers it is. But things like Thinky Brain's a pretty common strength. David is sick today and he's still in bed. I had to get up early and take Kiki out this morning and do her walk, which David normally does. I definitely prefer it when David does it. I think all cats are trouble children in their ways. But yeah, so there you go, guys. There's a quick summary, a not so quick summary, of everything I learned from my coaching last night about how my brain works. Your brain's mileage may vary, but I do highly recommend the Clifton Strengths Test, the Strengths Finder test. It really, as demonstrated, it can really give you some tips, tell you like the way that you function, right? And then when you have issues, you can maybe troubleshoot yourself a little bit better. And the interesting thing that I found from last night's coaching was that Terry was like, he's like, I can't really tell you what can work for you, but if something isn't working for you, I can tell you exactly why it doesn't work for you. So it's not the end all be all of like, this will give you the magic lantern to guide you out of the darkness, but it does give you things that you can lean into. And if you are having issues, it can help you figure out why. So I'm going to grab just a little bit fresh green stuff, guys. Look how fresh and crisp this edge is. Oh, here it is. We're just going to pinch off some of it. Ooh, it feels a little stiff. I wonder if this is an older package. Oh no, this side's okay. Well, let's see. We'll see. The last package I got from Army Painter was actually really, really fresh. So that's why I ordered it from them again. But if this one turns out to be not as fresh, then I'll be like, well, maybe we order from a different, maybe I order from Green Stuff World next time. I find that practice minis or practice cards, I tend to practice on cardstock if I'm going to do something new, are of limited use. It depends. Again, everybody's brain is different. Yeah, this is like not great green stuff, guys. I'm kneading it up. I'm going to see, but I think that this might be older green stuff. I may be very disappointed. Yeah, I ordered it from the same exact vendor. But I'm seeing some chunks in here. Now, for basing stuff, that's not a big deal. But I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow. But yeah, to have a brand new green stuff and to have it already be getting chunky, that is a waste of money. No, there is no such thing as bad batch. This is, when you see chunks in your green stuff, it means that it's older. It means that whoever you got it from, that package has been sitting on the shelf. And this is kind of the problem and why I kind of feel like I have to start ordering from hardware stores. Because green stuff is out of style, right? Everybody does 3D now. And that means less green stuff is selling. And that means less rollover. And that means packages that are sitting longer on shelves. So with that in mind, I may need to order it from hardware stores that are still selling it to plumbers. Yeah, because we're getting chunks. We've got chunks in here. It's not smooth. Yeah, it's old. It means it's old, Masamune. Yeah, there is no bad batch. Oh, I don't usually buy their stuff at all, but last time I bought this from them, I had a great experience, Kuro. So it's just, like, inconsistent. I don't like Milliput at all, Masamune. I played with it. I don't like it. I don't know, Pedrig. It's impossible to tell. Oh, but I got way too much yellow in this now. Now I need to go back to blue. But when you've got chunky green stuff, actually base work is the best thing you can use it for. But yeah, this is definitely stiff. It's very stiff. I was ordering from Reaper because Reaper always runs out. And that means it stays fresh. But yeah, Milliput is like, I mean, everybody likes their different stuff, right? I feel like I like green because I can actually sculpt with it, whereas Milliput, I can't really sculpt with it. I tried it on a base and I actually didn't like the results. So it's everybody's different, right? Everybody's like, what your product that you really love is going to be different. But you can see how chunky this is. Not smooth. I mean, there's epoxy sculpt, there's Milliput, but I'm going to stick to green stuff. I'm just going to order it from someone else. Yeah, this is so chunky. It's bad. So bad. I'm going to have to toss this whole package and order a different one. Luckily, it's, you know, fairly cheap, but still disappointing. Very, very disappointing. All right, we're going to try to work with it. Let me get my rock sculptor out here. Yeah, I prefer to mix them if I'm doing actual sculpting, Richard, but no, it's all going to be the same. It's not going to matter. Yeah, some of the inside. Maybe. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, it feels like maybe a little bit better. I'll cut it off. This is why I have Teflon scissors, so I can just cut off my green stuff. I ordered this off of Amazon Shadowspawn. It's no guarantee. In fact, a 3-foot piece might be more prone to be bad. Because it's, you know, who orders a 3-foot piece? All right, so I cut off the end. Should I cut off the outer edges too, you said, Julie? Kind of like cut off the outer bits. Let's do that. Let's cut off the outer edges. All right. So this is why the non-stick scissors, guys, by the way. Here, Ed, move out of the way. See, look, the non-stick scissors. It's a miracle. We'll try to cut that much off, and then we'll see if that makes a difference. Plop this down into the trash. Plumber's putty, Kariniko. Yeah, you use a fingernail to scrape it out close. I'm going to cut off this one. Let's see here. We're doing surgery. This is great because I never knew about this before. Thanks, Julie. And you use a fingernail to script. I don't know. It's still a bit like kind of firm, but this feels softer. So maybe. I feel like the outside layer is what's hard, and yeah, I see what you mean. Because if you use a fingernail to scrape it out from between these, here, I'm going to show you guys what this looks like. See how this edge has an actual edge? There, see it? So the outer layer is plasticky. See that? Look at it. It's almost pulling away. It's almost hard enough to pull away. But this inner part is goopy still. Quantum, we know. This was frozen in the freezer. But thanks for in case anybody missed that. Yeah, just the yellow side. Yeah, so there you go, guys. So if you look for this, so the outside is actually plasticky, but the inside is still goopy. And the blue looks, I see a little bit of the same kind of thing on the blue side, but the blue side is actually very tacky, so we're fine on that. All right. Thanks, Julie. Green users just the best, everybody. I might be able to use a sculpting tool to get some of this out. Call it skinning the putty. Interesting. See? This is why Bob and Julie rock, everybody. They know the secrets. Look, I can get it. I can get it out. I pulled it out. Look at that. That is so cool. I never knew that. Julie and Bob, you are gods. I'm going to throw out this horrible mutant maggot of green stuff and use the other one. This is really interesting. I had never run into this. Maybe because I was always at Reaper, I was always able to get Reaper's putty. And Reaper's stuff was always really fresh. But still. Yes, yes. Julie saved us. Oh yeah, now it's nice and soft. Look at that. See how soft and mushy that is? Yeah. This is why Bob and Julie are awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. You saved it. You saved it. I don't have to order another green stuff now. I can just pluck the guts out of the green stuff I've got. Now I can mix it up. Yeah, interesting. That's very, yeah. See, now it's really goopy. Now it just wants to stick to my fingers. It's like, you accused me of not being goopy enough. I will change your mind on that. I'm just going to freeze it. If I freeze it, Twisted Oma, you don't have to worry. It should stay fine in the freezer. Hypothetically. I imagine there's a point where that doesn't, where it gets so old you can't resuscitate it, but, or you can't, it just all cures, but if you've kept it in the freezer, maybe. Yeah, look at that. We have green stuff, and it's nice and flexible. It doesn't have wobbly, it doesn't have clumpies in it. It's not like a worm, a bad lumpy worm. Yeah, awesome, Julie. I agree with Richard. That's a game changer. None of us knew that. We all learned stuff today. All of us. Fantastic. I love learning stuff. It's wonderful. All right, cool. Well, now I know. And I'm going to keep it just like that so that I can remind myself that that's what I have to do to it. But it means I can still use all of this green stuff. Yes. Super awesome. Yeah, I've used epoxy sculpt before, Mazamune. I used to like it better than green, but I found that as I got better with green stuff, I got to really prefer green over everything else. I have mixed epoxy sculpt and green together, and also actually the mix I really like is Fimo and green together. Well, they are too. They can also be there, Richard. But yeah, now there's also another source of hard bits, right? All right, so I'm going to grab some of this. And I'm just going to use it to kind of texture the border between the gravel and the stone here. And we'll keep those little skeleton hands. Yeah, it goes bad fastest at the middle. Yeah, epoxy sculpt is cool because, like Milliput, you can thin it with water, right? So Milliput and epoxy sculpt definitely have uses. And it's all just what you're used to working with. I mean, like I said, I used to prefer epoxy sculpt, like hands down, 10-1. Then there was one model I was working on where it just did not work. It just would not work for me. And I ended up getting so frustrated that I decided just not to work with it anymore. I found that green worked better. So it's all what you're working on, who you are, what you like to work with. You know, there is no right or wrong answer. Just because I don't like Milliput doesn't mean it's not really useful, especially if you've got a lot of experience with it and you can make it do exactly what you want it to. That's really what it matters, right? Can you make it do what you need? Just going to pull this off of here. I want to keep these little skelly paws free of green. Oh, the rain is here. Nope, I'm not going to do Skellicat. I decided to do just a skull down there instead. Skellicat was not found, and I decided, Pendrake, that I did not need Skellicat. I wasn't going to waste more time working for it, looking for it, because the other thing I would have had to do is rip out this whole area because the base would have been wide, which was my initial concern kind of when I was thinking about doing that. So I decided to not buy into the sunk cost fallacy, and just because I had thought I would do it, insist on doing it, I decided it wouldn't work, so we put it aside. I know, it is. We had such hard rain, it woke me up last night. I'm going to pull this green stuff up onto the gravel, guys, and I'm also pressing down so that the green is kind of filling in around some of the gravel, and if some of the gravel comes off, I'll just press it into the green stuff and that'll essentially make a transition zone where I get some of the texture of the gravel, but it works down to the green. But yeah, last night it was just thundery rain. We had actual like puddles in our backyard this morning. UV resin like 3D printer. Just kind of creating, I'm just trying to create a little bit of a stipple texture here around the mound where those hands are coming out. Just a little bit. I just want some sort of transition from the gravel and the stuff to this flat part he's standing on. But yeah, so it's been raining, like, it started yesterday evening at 8 and like got really, really heavy over the night, and now it's back. And Kiki still has to take another walk. Alright, so we're going to take some of this, and I need to texture it on this side, because I've got kind of a rough texture over here. Our foam roof means it's really easy to hear our rain. So I'm going to just stipple with the tip of this onto that green, and I'm going to stipple it over this gravel too, so that we can get kind of a consistent feel. And again, whenever I see a piece of gravel come loose, I'm going to press it into the green here to help with that texturing. So that should help a little bit, blending this in, and then I can like make it more stone where he is at. Oh, I see. Yep, I get it. Yeah, clear resin for water effects. I actually prefer to sculpt my water on small pieces. We just did a piece like that. So this is just green stuff, sculpted. I did put some Woodland Scenics water effects on it, but I painted it so that it would be not glossy, since I did NMM on this piece. But I'm really happy with how the waterfall came out. It really looks natural. Even my husband was impressed, and it takes a lot to impress him. But yeah, for smaller pieces, like 28 mil, I do like to just sculpt the water. But then bigger pieces, my husband's actually king of water effects. He's done the best water effect I've ever seen. Let's get some more stippling in this and blend it in like earth above that little bit of stone. But yeah, people can do really cool stuff with that, scuffing the resin stuff. David was just showing me somebody doing a big, like, ocean thing for model trains, where they actually bought a side, I think an angle grinder in, and just buffed, like, a wave pattern into the top of the resin after they'd done it, and then they throw a gloss over it, and it looked amazing. It looked real. There's some amazing stuff you can do with that resin and water effects. Someday I'll play with it. On these little guys, though, I haven't really ever wanted to do anything that intensive with it. Yeah, our foam roof makes the rain sound pretty loud. When it was really coming down last night, it was loud enough to wake me up. All right, so back here we've got some pebbles and stuff. We're going to also do a little bit of green and texture there. And I'm going to do a bit more up here on this rock. And that should finish out the stream, so. A heavy gel gloss. That makes sense. Yeah, it's really cool, the things that people do with that stuff. I tend to be like, as far as a miniatures painter, although I'm arguably a high level one, with stuff like that, I tend to not learn it until I've got a project that requires it. And then I take the opportunity to expand my knowledge base. Otherwise, I get so distracted by something that I'm not even going to use. I have to watch my thinky brain. It tends to run off and want to play with my learner all over the place. All right, so we'll go and texture this and pull it down. So I'm making it thinner as it goes back. And just a pokey, stipply texture like the sand. But yeah, I haven't had the urge to do a water base. Not a real big one like David did for Mermaid. I tend to like smaller water bits on my bases. Someday I'm sure I'll run into one where I want a lot of water. Then I'll have to think about it. Yeah, snow-themed dwarf army. Yep. Then that happened. Yep. Sure, Zachariah. Have a good day. Yeah, definitely respirator. And of course I don't, after all that fuss with the green stuff, I don't need nearly as much as I mixed up. I'm going to just do a little bit more texturing. And we'll go to the front. And after this all, we should be able to actually paint this. Finally! How long did it take us to do this freaking base? Ed's been waiting to be done for a long time. So I'm just flattening it down for the most part, and then I'll stipple it. And I want to make it a little irregular at the back. So that it looks natural as it's blending in. There we go. And I'll get closer here. So you can see that rough texture that I'm creating here, just with the tip of my sculpting tool, and I'll run it into, since it takes a while for the green stuff to set, I can run it right into this gravel and make it blend in there. And run it around the ground here where the hands are. There we go. So we've got some more ground effect stuff. Oh, you got to paint Bob and Julie's Knolls? The Knolls for the Kickstarter, Zachariah? They're cool. I love Knolls. We'll probably paint some of those on the stream. We haven't painted a Knoll since the Knoll Pirate. I've been just ignoring it, Pendrake. I was, at this point, I just want to get the model done, so I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll do something a little bit. I don't know. I want to paint the base, and I'll decide what I want to do with the Spell Effects handkerchief. And I still got to paint the top of the snake. Like, the problem is we still got, like, stuff to paint on this. It's becoming a very long project. I didn't really want it to be this long. So now let's go in and blend in Mr. Skelly here. Let's go down and back out a little bit while I get a chunk of green that's the appropriate size and shape. Yeah, you're more likely, Zachariah, you should send them to green users, because God knows trying to get Ron to do that is going to, like, take forever. Alright, so we're taking this, we're making it, we want it to go around here, but we don't need that much of it. Oh, I hear a Kiki. Hey, Keeks. You wishing that Daddy would get out of bed? She's like, I'm sad. Dad hasn't come out of the bedroom yet. Like a day. So just stick that on. I don't know that color would work great. I was going to go green with it. I'm going to go yellow-green with the stuff on here, I think, Pendrake. That color doesn't look great with the red. I think you'll agree. But yellow-green should work much better on this model. Alright, so now let's get this green stuff patted down. So I grab some water and smooshing it where I want it. I want to be able to put some texture in there. Hooray for Knolls, indeed. I love Knolls. I'm with you, Carrie Michael. I'm going to just flip some of that over the top of the sword there. And again, any little gravel bits that want to come off, I just squish them into the green stuff like I did with that little guy. But yeah, we'll definitely paint some Knolls on here once they come out. The problem is I didn't add them to my pledge, so I'm probably doomed and I won't get them anytime soon unless they come out on Bones USA sooner rather than later. But if they're Bones, those were Bones USA, weren't they, Zachariah? Or were they 3D print? Either way, hopefully that means Reaper can get them out, released in blister sooner. I do love Knowles. I look forward to seeing yours, Zachariah. I'll have to make sure my Knowles are different. I don't know if I want to go with the yellowy green that I did with Mr. Knoll Pirate, but maybe. Okay, we've got this mostly where we want it. So now let's actually texture it. Yeah, if they were Bones USA or 3D, they should definitely, once everything's fulfilled, they should come out. Because then Reaper doesn't have to order them, right? They just need to produce them. So we'll have to watch for that. When you guys see Knowles hit the store, let me know so that I can go and get some Knowles. I ordered very little from the Kickstarter because I didn't want to blow a lot of money. I'm trying to be good this year. Need to actually put some money into my retirement funds for once. It's easy to forget the retirement funds, but I was so good at it for a while, and then when the pandemic hit, I became very bad at it, so I need to get back into it. Oh, can you send some to me, Reaper Miniatures? If you can send me some, I will take them, for sure, and we'll put them in the stream. Because I liked the Knolls and the Lizardmen. But I would be happy to do more. I'd like to do more monstrous types on the stream. We've been doing a lot of humans lately. Humans and elves. Alrighty. So got that built up, textured, good. But yeah, I would love to paint some Knolls or Lizardmen or both. Any of the above. I'm up for it. And I could use some more models. I'm getting low on my my stock of Pro-Tips minis. Because we're going to be starting a bunch, and then I won't have much of a backlog. So yeah, John, I'd love that if you would. Be fantastic. Many thanks. Alright. So we're just kind of bringing all this stuff together, trying to blend it in. And we're covered, at the end, we have covered almost all of the original Dark Sword base. And I find that, yeah, I love Knolls too. But this is what I tend to do with Dark Sword models. Because often I find the bases just aren't sculpted the way I would prefer, or it's got texture that I don't like. And so I go over them. Come on, little green stuff bit. Get in there. There we go. And we'll get some of this texture in there. There we go. Yay. I am happy to be getting a lot closer to done with this, so I would have to get out another skull if I wanted to do what I wanted to do up here. Maybe I could just stick the skull right there and have tendrils coming off. Maybe I could make it shorter than I originally was thinking. I really want to get this model done, so anything we do with the hanky is going to have to be simple. But I do have green stuff right now. Let me see if I have another skull that's decent. Alright, let's look for one without a lot of mold line. That one's pretty good. This one is a partial skull. Didn't even cast. This guy's pretty good. A lot of these others have too much mold line for me to want them. Or they're a little bit off. Good agitators, but not great skull. Yeah, I think this one. I think this guy. Let's grab our file again. And put the rest of these guys back. These were meant for paint agitators, so they weren't like necessarily QC'd, but you can dig a decent skull out of here if you need one. Alright, little skull. Just gonna get this gussied up because we have green stuff right now, so I can technically stick it on. Pin it and stick it on. Oh, except it's really at the end of the stream. Well, we'll see. I had one day where I went short and then I ended up going long every day after that. I'm not gonna go too crazy with removing this mold line because I think this is where the green's going to go, so. Okay. A second while I get this going. All right. Tendrils. I want tendrils around the skull. Tendrils. Ah! The problem is the skull is so tiny. Tendrils. Tendrils. More tendrils. Just making energy that's coming around, getting onto the skull. Want one on the lower jaw. Ah, oh. And I need one over here. Yeah, normally I don't need skull factor on a model, Richard. That's why it wasn't. I think I'm going to switch this one to up here. And then, we'll have this one underneath. Yeah, normally I don't need skull factor because I'm just not painting anything like that. Skull in energy. Energy coming off hanky. Splook. Splook. Sculpting tool employed. And yeah, wire armature under this would be better, but we can do more green work. And I'm going to need to tip this guy to make sure that it doesn't collapse on itself. But we can blend this in Yeah, I think I want it up a little bit. So I'll need to support it a little bit. I'll need to tip it back, chuck on it. The green is pretty stiff, so that's good at this point. But yeah. He's sending out another skull spirit here. So we'll do more green work, but since it's the end of the stream, I just want to get this anchored in. And then we can utilize more green in the future. So I'll probably hang it like this. I'll balance him inside of a little cup so that this hangs down so that it'll set in the direction I want it, since I didn't support it with wire. Because I just decided to flop it together at the last minute. And once the green cures, it's actually a pretty thick cable of green, so it should be pretty strong. And we can do more green to blend it into the hanky on the other side, and also to shape this side of it. I can cut some of it off and reshape it as we go. I think we're pretty good otherwise. Just making sure I didn't fingerprint anything as I was messing around with this. So yeah. So yeah, this is very, very rough, but we'll add more energy tendrils. We'll probably cut away some of this and resculpt it. But it's just enough to make it a little bit longer, and that doesn't look like a hanky anymore, right? So all right, let me find a good, actually I think I'll be able to just stuff him into my big jar here. Although I might have, let me grab a couple of things. Hold on, let me see what I can do. Yeah, actually this works, I think. I'm going to put him in my gravel container. I do have a little bit of still sticky green stuff on the tip here, so I'm going to rest it in here. The advantage of this is that I can sculpt it out, right? I can pull it out, set this down, set this in here. Oh, need that closer to the edge. There we go. And let it impact, kind of sit there with Ed, and then it will balance. And that will balance for long enough for that green stuff to cure in the correct position. And it's stable. It's not going to move. It's not going to fall because the rim of the cup is keeping it there. And it's also resting in this little chevron, so it's not going to move. So yeah. Yeah, so we'll do more green work on this fell effect to make it look a little nicer. It's like really just wanted a kind of a skeleton in place so that we could then, I can carve parts off, I can add to it, I can embellish a little bit. And we can rock that. So we will let that set. But there we go. Ooh, stretch. And the rain has stopped for now. I see some blue sky, so it's definitely time to walk the puppa. Let me put away my Teflon scissors. Best things I ever bought, I swear. Yeah, guys, thanks for everything. I hope you guys enjoyed the mindset talk. And let me put some of this stuff back here. There we go. And yeah, tomorrow we will actually, speaking of mouseling, tomorrow we will be back to Miss Mouse. So we will continue work on her various parts. I really like how she is coming so far. Probably boots, belts, armor. I know we started on lantern. If I feel like it, we'll do lantern tomorrow. Lantern is really a pain, but if we feel like it, we will. Yep. Thanks, everybody. Oh, Rhonda will not be on this afternoon. Thanks for the heads up, Quindy. All right, so come back tomorrow morning, guys. And until then, I hope you have a lovely day. Yeah, take it easy.